Hi everybody. Hi, hello and welcome. I have a really beautiful plant for you today. This is Calycanthus or Hartlage wine sweet shrub. And I just wanted to show you it because I think it's really underappreciated, especially in the shade shrub gardens. So this is Calycanthus x ralstonii. The particular variety is called Hartlage wine sweet shrub, and it's also known as Caroline Allspice. And I just wanted to show you how beautiful and how unique these flowers are. They're such an interesting maroon, chocolatey purple kind of color. So there are two kind of frequently appreciated species. There's the Floridus, and then there's the Chinensis. Some taxonomists would also agree that there are two other species. I believe one is called the Californicus, and I'm not sure of what the other one is off the top of my head. But Hartlage wine and Aphrodite are definitely the two most frequently seen cultivars for garden use. This one over here is Hartlage wine, which is Calycanthus x ralstonii, and then the other one, which is a Floridus hybrid, is Aphrodite. Aphrodite has kind of longer straps. It has a little bit more of these white inner petals. The inside of the flower is a little bit different, but the growth habit's all the same. So this video kind of covers all Carolina Allspice. So the flowers on Carolina Allspice come out from late spring in through to midsummer. They have a pretty long bloom time. You'll find that when plants are younger, they don't bloom quite as profusely, but when they do grow up, they can put on a lot of growth, a lot of blooms in one season. The mature blooms are typically a little bit bigger than this. It's just this is kind of a second spray of blooms. The first blooms of the season are always a little bit bigger. They have an interesting bloom structure, so it's almost like a magnoliid. So it has an internal comb of female sex parts. They're hermaphroditic flowers, but an internal structure that's really quite reminiscent of a cucumber tree or a magnolia. And then they have these really interesting seed pods. So the seed pods, the fruit, kind of almost remind me of lotus seed heads. They're really interesting and they persist on the plant for a really long time. I can't speak to whether or not they're self-fertile, but they're certainly really cool. They're really cool capsules. This definitely is a key ID feature of this plant. Another ID feature of this plant is really just the way that the internal corolla of petals is kind of enveloping that middle sexual structure. It's really interesting. They have these really cool kind of flares of pigment. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's really cool. So all Calycanthus will have an entire margin. There's no serrations on here whatsoever. They have small petioles, and they have an opposite arrangement. So the leaves always come out in pairs. Reminds me a lot of like a Lonicera or like a dogwood in that way. They're deciduous, so they do drop all of their leaves in the fall, which is something that I'll get into a little bit more detail later. The fall color on these guys is beautiful. But yeah, they're deciduous, and they don't look like much in the winter. Honestly, you're just kind of looking at sticks in the winter, but when they emerge, they are so beautiful, and like the new leaves are just so delicate and glossy and thin and just kind of incredible. So Calycanthus does not like being in pots. Something that I'm kind of a bit of a hypocrite with because I have mine in a pot. But if space permits, you're definitely going to want to keep these in ground. They're going to do a lot better for you in ground. They're a multi-stemmed, multi-trunked shrub that has kind of like a vase to mounded top form. Very reminiscent of a mock orange or a ninebark, for example. And they grow to a mature height of about 8 to 10 feet. A lot of sources will say 8 feet, but in my opinion, 10 feet's kind of more accurate, with a similar spread. So the fall color on these guys is bright, medium yellow. The entire leaf turns yellow at the same time. It's just really a striking plant for its fall color and for its interesting summer color. Definitely an underappreciated plant. They like humus, really nutrient-rich soil. This is definitely a plant that suffers in low-grade, really clay-heavy soil. It's not one that likes really sandy soil. It likes a well-balanced, high in organic matter soil that drains freely. You'll see a lot of people will claim that these grows in full sun to full shade. My opinion, and just from what I've seen personally, not just here but in other gardens, definitely more of a part shade plant. You do run the risk of having the leaves burn if you have these guys in full sun, just because the cuticle on the leaves is really thin. So you're going to want to be careful, especially if you move it to a full sun exposure area. You're going to want to harden it off and acclimate it a little bit, kind of introducing it to that area a little bit at a time, so it doesn't burn. Looking at it, actually kind of reminds me of Calacarpa, the leaves. They're really quite cool, or almost like a salal. This is not edible. I know it's called allspice, but it's definitely an ornamental plant. There might be some old folk medicinal uses that I'm not aware of, but to my knowledge, it's not edible. It's definitely more of an attractive foliage plant. It's not super competitive with other plants. You can plant it in relatively close proximity to other things that appreciate part shade, like oak hydrangeas, for example, and make a mixed perennial shrub border. It looks really quite nice in those applications. I mean, the color is beautiful. The individual flowers don't bloom for very long. You're looking at like 2 to 3 days per flower, but there's a profusion of flowers, and they kind of go all the way up. In wetter climates, in areas where you get a lot of rain, you got to be careful that the flowers don't fade too quickly in the rain, because when they get wet, they become floppy, and just something to be mindful of. So now I just wanted to talk a little bit to you guys about pruning. So you're going to want to prune Calycanthus immediately after it finishes blooming, because it blooms on 1-year-old stalks. It'll bloom a little bit on newer wood, but for sure, if you want the most blooms, you're going to want to prune immediately after it's finished its bloom time. Oh, there's a pollinator. Hello. I don't know if you guys can see that. Of course, my camera's not focusing while he's on there. But yeah, you want to prune immediately after blooming. And something that's interesting about Calycanthus specifically is a lot of shrubs have like lateral and apical dominance, meaning that when you cut them, they'll fork and they'll produce 2 to 4 sub branches from where you cut. I find sometimes that's true for Calycanthus, but sometimes when you prune it, they'll only produce 1 shoot. But to compensate for that 1 shoot, they'll produce suckers at the bottom. So just something to be mindful of. You're definitely going to reduce the size of this plant if you cut it when it's too young. When they're established, when they've been in the garden bed for like 5, 6, 7 years, you can hack it back to about half to control its size. I wouldn't go all the way down to the ground. I wouldn't coppice or anything like that, because then it's probably not going to regenerate really all that nicely for you. But yeah, that's Calycanthus. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Oh yeah, I guess I should probably talk a little bit about where it's native to. And just a quick comment, I forgot to mention earlier on in the video that 4th species that I was talking about is Western Sweetshrub, or Calycanthus occidentalis. So that has a smaller bloom that kind of cups upwards. It's a little bit less showy, it's less horticulturally important. Although this plant, the Carolina Sweetshrub specifically, does have the Horticultural Award of Merit. So something to just mention, because it is quite a versatile, beautiful, cultivated shrub. So the occidentalis is native to a lot of the California coast and Sierra Nevada. So you'll find that in kind of higher altitude places and dry places throughout the interior of California and the westernmost extremities of Nevada. And then the Floridus is native to a lot of parts of the United States. So this is kind of an understory shrub that you'll find in places like Missouri. You'll find them probably as far east, I would imagine, as Arkansas, and kind of in those internal wooded areas. You can think like extreme northern Louisiana by like Lafayette, that kind of area. The chinensis one, or the Sino-Calycanthus, is native to China. But yeah, just something to note. So this video is kind of long-winded. I'm sorry about that, you guys. I'm kind of all over the place, but key takeaways: you're going to want rich, fertile soil. You're going to want them in part shade, in my opinion, not full sun. You're going to want to prune them back immediately after blooming to control size, but not really necessary if you have the space to accommodate them. 4 distinct species, some people would argue 2. Carolina Allspice.